Hey everyone, so you just got or plan to get Black Swan and are now building a team for her. Of course, Runmei and Kafka are going to be her best teammates, but maybe you don't have both of them, or maybe you're willing to play without the sustain, or maybe you just want to use Runmei on the second half. Whatever the case may be, if you have Black Swan, you should seriously consider investing in Guinaifen. Keep in mind that this video is not a super in-depth Guinaifen or Black Swan guide, more so an analysis on why and how these two units work so well with each other. I won't go into too much detail on Black Swan's abilities, but basically how she works is she is buffed by other damage over time units, and she buffs other damage over time units. So basically, the more damage over time units you have in your team, the better everyone becomes. This is thanks to how Black Swan's kit works. Her damage over time, Arcana, benefits greatly from having other dot units on the team. Her basic attack, talent, Ascension 2 trace, and Ascension 4 trace all get you a lot more Arcana stacks if the enemy has more dots on them. With more dots, you can easily and consistently get to the 7 stacks required for Arcana to ignore 20% of the enemy's defense. Going beyond the 7 stacks will also greatly increase your damage, as every single stack adds 12% to Arcana's multiplier. Her Ascension 4 trace does have a limit of 3 stacks, so going beyond 3 dots will not gain you more stacks from her Ascension 4 trace. Keep in mind that Kafka's Light Cone inflicts its own separate damage over time, so if you've got 2 dot units and one of them has Kafka's Light Cone, you will be consistently getting the 3 dots that you need. Not only do other dot units give you more Arcana stacks, they can also trigger Arcana to deal a percentage of its original damage. In Guinaifen's case, her ult can trigger Arcana for 92% of its damage if the enemy is inflicted with Epiphany, which is the debuff given by Black Swan's ultimate. This is because Guinaifen's ult triggers burns, and Epiphany makes it so Arcana is regarded as a wind shear, shock, bleed, and a burn. Still, it is important to note that triggers will not actually take advantage of Arcana's 3 and 7 stack effects. Now, although Guinaifen won't be triggering Arcana very often, as she can only do so with her ult, when she does trigger it, the damage is significant. That is how Arcana benefits from other dots. But how do other dots benefit from Black Swan? There's two ways. One is the defense reduction from Black Swan's skill. If you don't know, defense reduction scales exponentially. This means that the more defense reduction you have, the more your damage is increased, at least until you reach the limit of 100% defense reduction. This means that the 20% defense reduction from Black Swan's skill greatly increases your damage, even more so if your other dot units are using the prisoner set, which they should. Speaking of the prisoner set, having more dots allows you to reach the 3 stack limit of this set more easily. Now, the other way in which dots benefit from Black Swan is through Epiphany. Epiphany makes it so enemies take 25% more damage during their own turn, which means that all your dots will be benefiting from this damage increase. While the previous synergies I mentioned apply to all damage over time units, there are some unique ways in which Guinaifen can buff Black Swan. The main one is of course Guinaifen's signature debuff Fire Kiss. Fire Kiss is a debuff that stacks up to 3 times, making it so enemies take 7% more damage per Fire Kiss stack. This is a damage increase of 21%. If you have E6, the damage increase becomes 30.4% at 4 stacks. If you are building Guinaifen as a support for Black Swan, using the Resolution Light Cone will also give a massive damage boost to your Black Swan, as it will reduce enemies' defense by 12 to 16%. This defense reduction sounds like a very little amount, however it is a lot more significant than you might think. I'll explain the maths behind why a little later. Keep in mind that these buffs will also boost other DPS's damage, like Kafka. Also note that having Kafka together with both Black Swan and Guinaifen is exponentially better, as all these characters will be buffing each other. Add in a Runmei if you don't need a sustain, and the damage will be massive. If you don't have these other units, don't worry, as Guinaifen and Black Swan are a good enough core to clear all of the game's content. I mentioned that defense reduction scales exponentially, but how good is this? In Black Swan's case, it is incredibly valuable, as she already has a lot of defense reduction in her own kit. Her skill reduces 20%, then when Arcana has 7 stacks or more, that's another 20% reduction. If you're using the prisoner set, which you should, that is another 18% reduction. This gives us a total of 58 defense reduction from Black Swan alone. Now, here's a chart with all the most common defense reduction percentages you may reach and how they will affect the defense multiplier part of the damage formula. This is calculating assuming your characters are level 80 and you're fighting MOC 12 enemies, which are level 95. If you are using Resolution on Guinaifen, the extra 12 to 16% defense reduction, while it may seem small, is actually an increase to your defense down multiplier of anywhere from 15 to 27%. Keep in mind that if you are already at 100% defense down, Resolution will not increase your damage further. Pause at this chart to see how much more damage you can expect. Not only is Black Swan's damage increased a lot by an ally with Resolution, if you are using Kafka or any other DPS together with Swan and Guinaifen, they too will have their damage increased by both Resolution and Fire Kiss. It is clear that defense down is fantastic, but how good is the scaling on Fire Kiss? Well, Fire Kiss is a vulnerability, and vulnerabilities are their own part of the damage formula. Although it does not scale exponentially like defense down, it is still very valuable as vulnerability is a very rare debuff, meaning that you won't really run into diminishing returns. If Guinaifen is your only source of vulnerability, her 21 to 30.4% vulnerability will give you a final damage increase of exactly those percentages. For example, if you were to use a support that instead of giving vulnerability gave a damage bonus, even if the percentages were equal to Fire Keys, the actual damage increase would be much less as Black Swan already has damage boost from her Ascension 6 trace. Spreading out your buffs throughout different parts of the damage formula is the best way to maximize your damage. This is thanks to the nature of the damage formula, which multiplies all the different multipliers together. Now here is a quick basic guide for how to build Guinaifen as a support for Black Swan. Since Guinaifen's damage is not bad, you will want to use the 4-piece prisoner set to increase her own damage. If you are looking to use Guinaifen as only a support, you can run 4-piece Musketeer or 2-piece Hackerspace. As for planar ornaments, Glamoth is best if you can hit 135 or 160 speed. If not, you can use Panconspic or Space Ceiling. If you are using a pure support Guinaifen, you could use Fleet of the Ageless, Vongwak, or even Penacony. The main stats you'll want is an effect hit rate body, or attack if you can hit the 67% effect hit rate requirement without the body piece. You'll also want speed boots, or attack if you really can't get a speed boot, a fire damage, or an attack sphere, and finally an attack percent rope. For substats you want speed, effect hit rate, and attack. You do not need more than 67% effect hit rate with talents at level 10. If you have E1 Guinaifen, you may be able to have less EHR, around 45% could work, but still try to get to 67%. Then, the more speed the better, as you want Guinaifen to go before all your other dot DPSs. If she is a bit slower than your other dot, it might not be a problem, since her Ascension 4 trace forwards her action 25% when battle begins. Still, you want as much speed as possible. As for light cones, I highly recommend Resolution as it boosts all your team's damage. If you want Guinaifen's burn to hit harder, you could use Goodnight Sleep Well, Eyes of Prey, or even It's Showtime for great results. 5-star Nihility light cones will also work on her. Still, if you have Resolution, I highly recommend using it, especially at higher superimpositions. For ability level up priorities, her talent and ult are great to level up since they increase the team's damage. Leveling up her skill will greatly improve Guinaifen's own damage, and you can ignore leveling up the basic attack. Now, here are some recommended teammates assuming you will be running Guinaifen with Black Swan. First of all, Kafka is by far the best, as both Black Swan and Guinaifen benefit a lot from her. If you have to choose between using Kafka and Guinaifen, definitely choose Kafka. Guinaifen is fantastic, but Kafka is still on another level when it comes to dot teams. Ruan-Mei is also a fantastic support, as she massively buffs all of the team. In certain situations, Luca and Sampo can be good teammates, especially against their respective weaknesses. Tingyun is a great support for Black Swan, as the energy is very valuable. Asta is also great, as dots benefit a lot from speed and the attack is also useful. Pela can be fantastic, but if you are already reaching the defense down maximum of 100%, adding Pela will be pretty much useless. As for sustains, Huohuo is the best, but any other sustainer can also work just fine. Guinaifen's synergy with Black Swan is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you learned something new and useful. It's my first time making an analysis video like this one, so any feedback is really greatly appreciated. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe as I will continue doing videos like this one. If you have any questions, requests, or suggestions for future videos, please let me know in the comment section. Thank you.